Evan Hartley had always lived a quiet life. His small city apartment sat on the fifth floor of an old brick building that smelled faintly of coffee and rain. Most evenings he returned from work, cooked something simple like pasta or eggs, and sat by the window to watch the streets below. It was a routine he rarely broke, so when a thick envelope from something called the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Program arrived in his mailbox, he almost tossed it in the recycling bin. He slid it open only because the seal looked official, dark blue with a faint silver star. Inside, a letter welcomed him and explained in crisp, careful words that he had been chosen as a host for a visitor from an allied world. It sounded like a prank, some kind of late-night radio joke. He laughed, left the letter on the counter, and forgot about it for 2 days. But on the third night, a quiet chime at the door made his stomach tighten. He glanced through the peephole. No one. Then he opened the door and froze. A tall figure stood in the hallway. She was covered by a simple dark coat that shimmered faintly, as if dusted with tiny stars. Beneath the hood, her skin glowed with a soft silver hue. Her eyes caught the dim hallway light and scattered it into ripples of green and gold. She looked both human and not, familiar and completely alien. "Are you Evan Hartley?" Her voice was gentle, melodic, each word shaped with care. Evan's mind raced. His first thought was that someone had hired an actor to play a trick. Yeah, he said slowly. "And you are?" "I am Lyra," she said, lowering her hood. "I come from the world of Kirith. I am assigned to you for the duration of my stay." The hallway felt too small for the moment. Evan blinked once, twice. "You're real," he whispered before he could stop himself. "I hope so," Lyra replied with a faint smile that curved like moonlight. Evan stepped back, still half in disbelief. "Come in, I guess." The apartment suddenly felt strange to him, as if he were seeing it for the first time. The worn couch, the stack of books by the lamp, the scuffed wooden floor, all looked ordinary to him but seemed to catch Lyra's bright eyes. She stepped inside, moving with a graceful caution, her silver-toned fingers trailing lightly over the doorframe. "This is warm," she said softly. "It's just a heater," Evan said, almost laughing. "Welcome to Earth, I guess." Lyra placed a small crystal case on the table. It shimmered faintly, humming like a distant chord. "These are my belongings. I require only a small space to rest." "Right." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I have a spare bedroom. It's not big, but it's yours." She turned her head slightly, listening as if the air itself carried music only she could hear. "Thank you, Evan Hartley." "Just Evan," he said. She nodded, repeating softly, "Evan." As he showed her around, the kitchen with its humming fridge, the tiny balcony that overlooked the city lights, Lyra asked endless questions. "What is the purpose of this?" she asked, touching the microwave. "It heats food." "Instantly." "Pretty much." "And this object?" She pointed to a framed photograph of his parents. "Those are my mom and dad," Evan explained. "Family." "Family," she echoed, as though tasting the word. Her curiosity was gentle but relentless, each question revealing how new everything was to her. When she stepped onto the balcony, she tilted her face toward the cold night air. "Your world smells of metal and rain," she said. "It is beautiful." Evan leaned on the railing beside her. Down below, the city pulsed with traffic lights and the faint sound of music from a distant street. He tried to imagine seeing it all for the first time. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It has its moments." Later, while Evan prepared a simple dinner, Lyra sat cross-legged on the couch, studying the flicker of the television. The glow reflected off her silver skin, turning her into a shifting piece of art. "Why do humans keep lights on even when it is dark outside?" she asked. "It makes us feel safe," Evan replied, setting a plate of toast and scrambled eggs on the table. "And it helps us see." "Safety," she repeated. "Interesting." She examined the toast carefully, then took a bite. The crunch made her eyes widen with delight. "This sound," she said. "It is like small stars breaking." Evan laughed, surprised at how quickly she could make something ordinary feel magical. When the evening quieted, Evan showed Lyra to the small spare bedroom. He had placed clean sheets and a soft blanket there earlier, unsure if she even needed them. She touched the fabric with delicate fingers. "This is soft," she murmured. "My people sleep in light chambers." "This feels comforting. I'm glad," Evan said. He hesitated at the door. "If you need anything, water, extra blankets, just ask." Lyra looked up, her golden green eyes luminous. Thank you, Evan. Your kindness is unexpected. I was told humans can be distant. We can be, he admitted. But we can be kind too. She gave a small, almost shy nod. I believe you. Back in his own room, Evan lay awake long after midnight. Through the thin wall, he could hear the faint hum of her crystal case and the occasional soft movement as she settled in. The reality of the evening finally sank in. A traveler from another world was sleeping just a few feet away. Instead of fear, he felt a quiet excitement. Something about her presence filled the apartment with a subtle light, like the first glow before sunrise. For the first time in years, Evan's life no longer felt like a simple routine of work and quiet evenings. Something new had begun the moment Lyra stepped across his doorway. He couldn't name it yet, but it warmed the air around him, and it made the city outside seem alive with endless possibility. Morning sunlight slipped through thin curtains and painted soft stripes across the floor. Evan woke to the quiet hum of his coffee maker and the faint sound of movement from the spare bedroom. For a moment he forgot that an alien guest was sleeping down the hall. Then he heard a door open with a careful click. Lyra stepped into the hallway, her silver-toned skin glowing softly in the morning light. She wore the same dark coat but without the hood. Her eyes, green and gold like forest leaves in sunlight, studied the kitchen with careful interest. "Good morning," Evan said, his voice still rough with sleep. "Good morning, Evan," she answered, pronouncing each word like a small treasure. "The air smells different, warm and bitter." He smiled. "That's coffee." "Coffee," she repeated, letting the word roll on her tongue as though testing a secret code. "It is the sound of wakefulness." "You could say that," he said, pouring a cup. "Want to try?" Lyra tilted her head, considering. "Is it safe for me?" "It might be strong," Evan admitted, "but one sip should be fine." She accepted the cup carefully, watching the steam curl upward like tiny ghosts. When she took a small taste, her eyes widened in surprise. "It is dark and alive," she said. "It makes my heart move faster." "That's the caffeine," Evan laughed. "It wakes people up." They sat together at the small table while the city stirred awake outside. Cars hummed along wet streets. Somewhere a dog barked. Lyra asked questions between sips of water. Questions about the sound of traffic, the smell of bread toasting, the reason humans covered their walls with framed pictures. Evan answered as best he could. "Photos are memories," he explained, pointing to the image of his parents on the wall. "We keep them so we don't forget." Lyra studied the photo, her luminous eyes softening. "My people keep memories inside crystal threads," she said. "But to hold them on paper, this feels tender." Later that morning, Evan offered to show her the neighborhood. The sky hung low with pale clouds, and a cool breeze carried the smell of rain. Lyra walked beside him, tall and graceful, drawing a few curious looks from passers-by. Her coat's faint shimmer made her look like a moving piece of starlight. They passed a bakery where warm bread scented the air. Lyra paused, breathing deeply. "This smell is comforting," she whispered. "That's fresh bread," Evan said. "Want to try some?" Inside, she watched the baker with wide eyes as he slid loaves from the oven. When she bit into a warm slice, she let out a quiet, musical sound of delight. "It is like holding sunlight," she said. Evan grinned. "That's a pretty good review." They wandered through a small park where children played near a fountain. Lyra watched a group of kids chase one another, their laughter ringing through the crisp air. "Why do they run and shout?" she asked. "They're just having fun," Evan explained. "It's how kids play." "Play," she repeated as though trying to capture its meaning. "Do adults play?" "Sometimes," he said with a chuckle. "Maybe not enough." She turned to him, head tilted. "Do you play?" Evan hesitated. "Not lately," he admitted. "Work keeps me busy." Lyra considered that. "Perhaps you should." Her simple words made him smile and ache at the same time. That evening, after a quiet dinner, they sat on the balcony. The city below flickered with countless lights. Windows, street lamps, distant signs glowing in the dusk. Lyra leaned against the railing, her silver skin catching the reflections like liquid moonlight. "This world is never dark," she observed. "Not in the city," Evan said. "We like to keep things bright. Do you fear the night?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But mostly we like to see where we're going." She tilted her head back, gazing at the faint stars beyond the city haze. "Where I come from, the night is endless and full of light. Our skies are rivers of stars. We do not fear them. We sing to them. Evan listened, imagining a sky so rich it needed no lamps. Sounds beautiful. It is, she said softly. But this, she gestured at the glowing streets below, has its own beauty. It is the light of many hearts. Her words settled in the quiet between them, warm and unexpected. Over the next few days, small routines formed. They cooked together, simple meals of eggs, vegetables, and the bread Lyra now loved. Evan showed her how to wash dishes, and she moved with graceful precision, as if each plate was a rare artifact. In the evenings, they explored more of the city. A small bookstore where she traced letters on book spines with awe. A music shop where she listened to jazz and closed her eyes as though the notes painted colors inside her mind. Sometimes she would ask questions that surprised him. Why do humans laugh when something is not logical? Or, why do you smile when you feel pain? Evan found himself pausing, really thinking about the answers. Explaining his own species made him see the world with new eyes. One night, rain tapped gently against the windows while they sat on the couch. Lyra watched the droplets slide down the glass. Rain smells like metal, she said. And earth. It sounds like quiet applause. Evan chuckled. I never thought of it like that. She turned to him, her eyes luminous in the dim room. Evan, may I ask something personal? Sure. Humans seem to seek closeness. They hold hands. They embrace. Is it only for comfort? He felt a small flutter in his chest. It can mean comfort, friendship, love. It's how we show we care. Do you care for many? Family, friends, he said. Some people have partners. It's different for everyone. Lyra nodded slowly, as if filing the thought into some hidden library. I wish to understand this more. Evan met her gaze and saw a gentle curiosity there, not just the cold interest of a scientist. Something warmer, something searching. As the night deepened, the rain softened to a faint whisper. Lyra stood and moved toward her room. Before she disappeared behind the door, she paused. Thank you for sharing your day with me, she said. I feel lighter. Evan smiled, a warmth spreading through his chest. Me too. When the door closed, he sat in the quiet living room, listening to the rain and the steady hum of the city beyond. Life, once predictable and gray, now felt full of small wonders. The presence of a silver-skinned traveler had turned every sound, every smell, every ordinary moment into something new and alive. He realized he was no longer just showing Lyra the world. She was showing him how to see it. The following morning dawned pale and quiet. Soft gray light filtered through the curtains, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen. Evan was already awake, reading the news on his tablet when Lyra entered. She moved like a gentle breeze, her silver skin reflecting the muted light. Good morning, Evan, she said, her voice smooth like distant music. Morning, Lyra, he replied with a small smile. Sleep okay? I rested well, she answered, tilting her head slightly. I dreamed of running rivers made of light, Evan chuckled. Sounds beautiful. It was. She studied him for a moment. Dreams are strange to me, but I am beginning to enjoy them. They shared a simple breakfast, toast with butter and a little honey. Lyra had discovered that she liked the sweet taste. She ate slowly, watching the honey stretch like golden threads. When the meal ended, Lyra folded her hands and looked at Evan with unusual seriousness. Evan, may I speak of my purpose here? He set down his coffee, sensing something important. Of course. My mission is not only to observe human culture, she said softly. I am here to learn how humans form bonds. Evan blinked. Bonds? Yes. Connections between hearts, she explained. My people admire the way humans trust each other, care for each other, and remain close even across distance. We do not have the same depth of feeling. I must understand it. Evan leaned back, thinking. That's a pretty big topic. I know. Her green-gold eyes glowed faintly. I have read about friendship, family, love. But reading is not enough. I must feel it. I must live it. The weight of her words settled between them like a soft shadow. Evan felt his heartbeat quicken. So, what do you want to know? Lyra looked down at her silver fingers. Everything. How you trust someone, how you care, how you forgive. Her gaze lifted, steady and bright. Will you show me? Evan hesitated. I can try, but it's not something you can just teach in a lesson. Bonding is moments, time spent together. It's when you share things you can't explain. Lyra's head tilted, curiosity sparking. Moments like when we walk together in the park or when you show me music. Exactly, he said. It's in the little things. She considered this. Humans also touch, she said softly. I see people hold hands, embrace. Is that part of bonding? Evan's throat went dry. Sometimes, he admitted. But only if both people want it. It can mean comfort, love, or just closeness. Lyra reached across the table slightly, her hand hovering above his. Would you show me? For a heartbeat, Evan froze, aware of the warm air between them. Slowly, he turned his palm upward. Lyra lowered her hand until her silver fingers rested lightly against his skin. Her touch was cool at first, like a smooth riverstone. Then it warmed quickly as if matching his own temperature. Evan felt a quiet spark travel up his arm. Not shocking, just gentle, like the first sunlight after a long winter. This is strange, Lyra whispered, her voice almost trembling. Your warmth. It speaks. Evan smiled faintly. That's what holding hands can feel like, a way to say you're not alone. Lyra looked at their joined hands as if they were a living star map. I can hear your heartbeat, she said softly. Yeah, he replied, his own voice barely above a breath. Me too. They sat like that for a while. The city sounds a distant hum beyond the window. Neither wanted to pull away first. That afternoon they went for a walk along the river that cut through the city. The air smelled of wet leaves, and the water glimmered under a shy sun. Lyra kept her hood down, unbothered by the few curious glances from strangers. Do humans always hide their feelings? She asked as they strolled. Not always, Evan said. But sometimes we're afraid of being hurt. Hurt, she repeated. Pain of the heart? Yeah. When you care about someone, you give them a piece of yourself. If they leave or break that trust, it hurts. Lyra walked silently for a moment. But you still choose to bond? Yeah, Evan said, because the good moments are worth the risk. She nodded slowly, as if storing his words like rare gems. That is, courageous. Later they stopped at a small street market. Lyra studied colorful scarves fluttering in the breeze, their threads catching sunlight like captured rainbows. She touched one lightly. It feels alive, she said. Evan bought it for her before she could protest. A gift, he said. She held the scarf close, eyes wide. Gifts are tokens of bonding? Sometimes, he said with a smile. It's a way to say you care. Lyra wrapped the scarf around her shoulders. It is warm, she whispered, her voice filled with quiet wonder. Thank you, Evan. Something about the way she said his name made his chest tighten in a way he didn't fully understand. That night, back on the balcony, they watched the sky deepen to velvet. The city lights sparkled below, stars of their own making. Lyra held the scarf around her like a soft shield. Today I felt something, she said after a long silence. When we held hands, when you gave me this, my heart felt bigger. Evan nodded, his voice gentle. That's what bonding can feel like your heart is stretching to make room for someone else. Lyra turned to look at him, her eyes shimmering with starlight. It is powerful, It frightens me a little. It's okay to be scared, Evan said softly. It means it matters. She smiled, a small, tender curve of her lips. Then I will not run from it. Later, as they prepared to sleep, Evan lay in bed staring at the ceiling. He could still feel the memory of her cool, warm hand in his. Something inside him had shifted. This was no longer just a cultural exchange. It was something deeper, something neither of them had planned. Across the hall, he imagined Lyra sitting quietly, perhaps holding the scarf, perhaps thinking of the same moments. A strange sense of connection hummed through the apartment, soft but strong. For the first time, Evan understood that the bond Lyra sought was already forming, slowly, quietly, like a seed beneath the earth waiting for spring. Soft spring rain tapped against the apartment windows as evening settled over the city. Evan set a pot of tea on the stove, the quiet hiss of boiling water filling the kitchen. Lyra stood by the glass balcony door, her silver skin reflecting the dim streetlights outside. She had learned to enjoy watching the rain, saying it reminded her of the gentle breath of stars. It smells like wet earth, she said softly, tracing a droplet's path down the glass. Your world has 1,000 scents in every moment. Evan smiled while placing cups on the table. That's true. Rain always makes everything smell more alive. Lyra turned to face him. The faint glow of the city lights caught the green-gold shimmer in her eyes. I feel peaceful here, she said. Your home is warm in a way I do not know how to explain. They carried their tea to the couch. The apartment smelled of rain, tea leaves, and something new. Something gentle that neither could name. Lyra wrapped the colorful scarf Evan had given her around her shoulders. The scarf had become a favorite of hers, like a small piece of the city's warmth. They talked quietly as the rain drummed on the windows. Lyra asked about the music playing from a neighbor's apartment. Evan explained it was an old love song, and she listened carefully, tilting her head as if the melody itself told a secret. What does the song mean? She asked. It's about missing someone you love, he said, about wanting them close even when they're far away. Lyra's eyes softened. Do you miss someone, Evan? He hesitated. Sometimes I miss my parents. And a few old friends. Life changes. People move on. Yet you keep their pictures, she said thoughtfully. You hold their presence in memories. Yeah, Evan said with a faint smile. It's how we stay connected. As the night deepened, a sudden flicker made the lights blink out. The power went off, leaving the apartment in soft darkness. Outside, the rain whispered against the windows. Lyra tilted her head, listening. The lights, they are gone. It's just a power outage, Evan assured her. Happens sometimes when it rains hard. He found a few candles and lit them. The warm glow painted the room with gentle gold. Lyra watched the flames dance, her eyes reflecting the light like twin stars. This light feels alive, she said, sitting cross-legged on the floor. It moves even when we do not touch it. It's fire, Evan explained, sitting across from her. It's been with humans since the beginning. It kept us warm, safe. She leaned closer to a candle, fascinated. It breathes. They talked for hours in the quiet glow. Lyra shared stories of her travels through deep space, silent journeys past nebulae that shone like frozen rainbows, planets where the skies burned green and violet. Her voice was soft and slow, and Evan found himself closing his eyes just to imagine the world she described. I sometimes wonder, Lyra said, if we lose something by traveling so far. My people watch stars for centuries, but we do not sit together like this. We do not share stories by warm light. You have that now, Evan said gently. Right here. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes shimmering. Yes, she whispered. I do. The next morning, the sky cleared, washing the city in pale sunlight. They decided to walk through the park, where rain had left the grass bright and soft. Drops clung to every branch, catching the light like tiny crystals. Children splashed in puddles. Dogs chased each other with wild joy. Lyra watched them all with quiet wonder. These small moments, she said, they hold more life than 1,000 empty skies. Evan nodded. That's why people love them. They remind us of what's real. They found a bench near a pond where ducks drifted lazily. Lyra sat with her scarf wrapped close, breathing in the damp air. I feel connected, she said. Not just to you, but to this world. I'm glad, Evan said, and he meant it. As days passed, their rhythm deepened. They cooked together, simple soups, warm bread, vegetables roasted with herbs. Lyra enjoyed learning how spices changed flavor. Sometimes she would close her eyes and guess each ingredient by scent alone, laughing when she guessed right. In the evenings, they often listened to music. Evan played songs from different countries, and Lyra would close her eyes, swaying slightly, as if she could see each note as a color. You feel music, she told him once. You do not just hear it. I can almost see it through you, Evan smiled. Music does that to people. One afternoon, while they were making tea, Lyra paused, her hands resting lightly on the counter. Evan, may I ask something? Personal? Sure, he said, sensing the weight in her voice. If you could leave this world to explore the stars, would you? He thought for a moment. I don't know. Part of me would love to see what's out there. But Earth is home. My family, my memories, everything I know is here. She nodded slowly. I envy that. My people have no single home. We travel, always searching. Sometimes I wonder what it would feel like to belong to one place, or one person. Her words lingered like soft music. Evan felt a quiet ache in his chest. Home isn't just a place, he said. Sometimes it's a person, someone you feel safe with. Lyra's luminous eyes met his. Do you have someone like that? Evan hesitated, his heart suddenly loud. Maybe, he said quietly. I think I might. Lyra's gaze held his for a long breath. She said nothing, but her faint smile carried more meaning than words. That night, as they sat on the balcony, the stars broke through a clear sky. The air smelled of fresh rain and distant flowers. Lyra leaned against the railing, her silver skin shining softly in the moonlight. I have never stayed this long in one place, she said. Time feels different here. Slower. Sweeter. I'm glad you stayed, Evan said. So am I. Her voice was barely a whisper. They stood side by side, close enough for their shoulders to almost touch. The silence was warm, not empty. The bond they had been building, slow and quiet, was now a steady presence like the heartbeat of the night itself. When Evan finally went to bed, he lay awake for a long time, replaying the evening in his mind. He realized that Lyra was no longer just a visitor. She was part of his days, part of his thoughts, part of the small, beautiful rhythm of his life. Across the hall, Lyra might have been thinking the same thing. The quiet apartment seemed to hum with something alive and new, a connection neither of them had planned, but both now felt deeply, whatever name it carried. Friendship, bonding, something more. It had taken root, and it was growing. The days grew longer and warmer. Street trees stretched new leaves toward the sun, and the city air smelled faintly of flowers and rain-soaked stone. Evan and Lyra continued their gentle routine. Morning coffee, walks through the park, quiet evenings filled with music and soft conversation. Each day felt like a small treasure Evan wished he could hold forever. One bright afternoon, they sat on a bench near the river, watching sunlight skip across the water. Lyra wrapped her scarf around her shoulders even though the air was warm. Her luminous eyes followed the flow of the current with a faraway look. Your rivers sing, she said softly. Evan smiled. Sometimes it feels that way, but a strange unease settled in his chest. Lyra had been quieter lately, her smiles shorter, her thoughts drifting like clouds. He wanted to ask what weighed on her, yet he hesitated, afraid of the answer. That evening, while Evan prepared a simple dinner, Lyra stood by the window. The fading light turned her silver skin into pale gold. She held a small crystal disc in her hand, its surface pulsing faintly. What's that? He asked, trying to keep his voice light. A message, she said, her tone calm but distant. It arrived while you were at work. He set the spoon down. From your people? She nodded. My mission here is nearly complete. The fleet will return soon. They call me back. The words hit him like a sudden gust of cold wind. How soon? Within 2 of your weeks, she said quietly. Evan felt his heart tighten. 2 weeks. Only 14 days until the apartment would be empty of her soft presence, until the warm glow she brought would fade. He tried to hide the ache, but it slipped into his voice. That's soon. Yes. Lyra turned, her eyes shimmering with a light that looked almost like sadness. I knew this would happen. I just did not expect it to feel heavy. They ate dinner mostly in silence. Evan tasted little of the food. His thoughts tangled in worry and quiet longing. He wanted to tell her not to leave, to ask her to stay, but he knew she had duties beyond his world. After they cleaned up, they sat on the balcony as the city lights flickered to life. The night air carried a gentle breeze scented with blossoms. "You are quiet," Lyra said softly. "I'm just thinking," Evan replied, "about my leaving." He looked at her, surprised by her directness. "Yeah," he admitted. "I don't want you to go." Lyra turned her gaze to the sky. "Neither do I." The next days passed like a dream that Evan wished would never end. They walked along the river at dusk, shared warm bread from the bakery, and listened to the soft music of a street violinist. Every moment felt sharper, brighter, as if the world itself knew their time was slipping away. One evening they visited the park after a gentle rain. Drops still clung to the leaves, catching the last rays of sunset. Lyra stopped to watch a small bird hop along the wet grass. "I will miss this," she whispered. "Your world sings even in silence." "You could stay," Evan said before he could stop himself. His voice held both hope and fear. Lyra looked at him, eyes deep as starlit oceans. "If I stay, I abandon my duty. My people sent me to learn. They trust me to return." "I know," he said quietly, feeling the weight of those words. "I just wish things were different." She reached out and touched his hand, her fingers cool and gentle. "So do I." That night the power went out again, leaving the apartment in warm candlelight. They sat on the floor, surrounded by the soft flicker of flames. Lyra held her crystal case in her lap, the faint hum blending with the quiet night. "I never thought I would feel this," she said. "On my world, bonds are like agreements, useful, logical. But this is something else." Evan listened, his heart full. "It's real," he said softly. "Yes," she whispered. "It is real." They stayed close, sharing the silence. Evan wanted to memorize everything. The curve of her luminous eyes, the way the candlelight danced across her silver skin, the quiet strength in her presence. A few nights later, they climbed the old observation tower at the edge of the city. From the top they could see miles of glowing streets and distant hills. Stars glittered beyond the city haze, brighter than Evan had ever noticed. "This is closer to the skies of my home," Lyra said, her voice almost reverent. "The stars look like a river here." Evan stood beside her, the cool wind brushing their faces. "I'll think of you when I look at them," he said. She turned to him, eyes bright. "And I will think of you when I see the blue of distant worlds." For a long moment they simply stood together, shoulders touching, the universe wide and silent around them. The final week crept by like a fragile melody. They cooked favorite meals again, warm soup, spiced bread, tea with honey. They laughed over small mistakes and told each other stories late into the night. Every word felt like a thread tying them closer, even as time pulled them apart. One evening, as the sunset poured orange light through the windows, Lyra spoke quietly. "I fear the distance," she admitted. "Not the space between stars, but the silence between hearts." Evan took her hand gently. "We'll find a way to stay connected. No distance can erase what we have." Her eyes shimmered like dawn. "You speak as if you know." "I believe it," he said firmly. "Because this," he squeezed her hand, "is real." Lyra closed her eyes, leaning closer. "Then I will believe it too." That night, as Evan lay in bed, he stared at the ceiling and listened to the faint hum of Lyra's crystal case through the wall. The thought of her leaving pressed heavy on his chest. Yet beneath the sadness, something steady remained, a quiet certainty that what they had built would not fade. Even when stars and distance tried to pull them apart, he drifted to sleep holding that belief, feeling both the ache of goodbye and the warmth of something lasting. The final sunrise of Lyra's stay painted the city in soft pink and gold. Evan woke early, the apartment silent except for the faint hum of distant traffic. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the heavy truth pressing on him. Today she would leave. He rose and stepped quietly into the living room. Lyra was already there, standing by the window. She wore the silver travel cloak she had brought from her ship. Morning light shimmered across her skin like a second dawn. Beside her rested the crystal case glowing with a slow heartbeat of blue. Evan's chest tightened. "It's really happening," he thought. Lyra turned at the sound of his footsteps. "Good morning," she said softly. Her voice carried both calm and sorrow. "Morning." he replied, his throat dry. Couldn't sleep? She shook her head. I wanted to watch the sun climb your sky one more time. They shared a quiet breakfast, simple toast, fruit, and tea. Each bite felt heavy with meaning. Evan tried to memorize every detail. The way she tilted her head when she tasted the honey, the gentle tap of her silver fingers on the cup. He wanted to store these moments like photographs in his heart. When the dishes were cleared, Lyra touched the crystal disc that would summon her transport. The shuttle will arrive in 3 hours, she said. Evan nodded, forcing a steady breath. 3 hours, he echoed. The words felt sharp. They decided to walk to the river one last time. The spring air was warm, carrying the scent of wet earth and blossoms. Birds called across the trees, their songs bright and clear. As they reached the riverbank, Evan slowed. Memories flooded him. Every conversation, every quiet laugh they had shared here. This place won't be the same without you, he said. Lyra looked over the water, her eyes reflecting the moving light. And my life will not be the same after this, she replied. I did not expect to find this kind of connection. Evan stepped closer. Neither did I. They stood side by side, letting the silence speak for them. On the walk back, Lyra reached out suddenly, her cool fingers sliding into his hand. Evan felt a soft warmth spread through him. They walked like that through the winding streets, the city sounds fading around them. He wanted time to stop. When they reached the apartment, Lyra gently released his hand and turned toward her room to finish packing. Evan stayed in the living room, staring at the empty balcony, trying to hold himself together. Soon she returned with the crystal case strapped across her shoulder. The shuttle is near, she said quietly. Her eyes glowed with a faint green light, an emotion Evan had learned to read as deep feeling. He swallowed hard. Do you really have to go? Lyra stepped closer. My people expect me. They trusted me with this mission. If I stay, I break that trust. Evan lowered his gaze. I know, I just don't want this to end. She touched his chin, lifting his face to meet her shimmering eyes. What we have does not end because of distance. He felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of sorrow and hope. Then tell me it's real. Tell me what it is to you. Lyra's voice was soft as a breath. It is a bond. Stronger than I thought possible. You showed me how humans care, how they share hearts. Now I carry that truth inside me. A gentle vibration filled the air, a low, humming tone that grew steadily. Through the window, Evan saw a faint blue light descending from the clouds. The shuttle. His chest ached. This is it, he whispered. Lyra nodded and shouldered her case. Walk with me? Always, he said. They left the apartment and walked to the rooftop landing pad. The city stretched below, golden in the late morning sun. The shuttle hovered above, a sleek shape of silver and light, wind whipping around them. Lyra turned to face him, her cloak lifting in the breeze. Thank you, Evan, she said. For every moment. He stepped closer, heart pounding. Thank you for changing my life. They stood inches apart. Evan wanted to hug her but hesitated, until Lyra reached forward and wrapped her arms around him. Her cool skin warmed quickly against his. Evan closed his eyes and held her gently, feeling the quiet strength of her presence. When they finally parted, her eyes shimmered with tiny sparks of gold. Our bond will not fade, she said. I believe you, he replied, his voice unsteady. A soft beam of blue light extended from the shuttle. Lyra stepped into it, her silver figure outlined in brilliance. She paused, looking back one last time. Evan, she said, her voice clear over the rising hum. I will find a way to reach you. He managed a small, trembling smile. I'll be waiting. The beam lifted her upward, her cloak fluttering like a comet's tail. The shuttle doors closed, and with a gentle roar it rose into the sky, shrinking to a glowing star before vanishing into the bright day. Evan remained on the rooftop long after the sound faded. The city below carried on, cars moving, people talking, but for him the world felt both larger and quieter. He pressed a hand to his chest where he still felt the echo of her embrace. Inside the empty apartment, her presence lingered like a soft light. On the kitchen counter he noticed a small crystal pendant he had never seen before. It pulsed faintly, a rhythm like a heartbeat. He picked it up. Warmth spread through his palm. A single line of delicate script glowed across the surface. Our bond transcends stars. Tears blurred his vision. Evan smiled, feeling both the ache of parting and the certainty of something unbreakable. The sky outside was a clear, endless blue. Somewhere beyond it, Lyra was traveling among the stars, and though she was light years away, Evan knew, without doubt, that their hearts remained connected. Weeks passed like soft waves on a quiet shore. Evan returned to his routine, work, evening walks, coffee in the small kitchen. But nothing felt the same. Every corner of the apartment carried a memory of Lyra. The faint scent of the strange herbs she liked to steep lingered in the air. Sometimes when the light hit the walls at dusk, he imagined he could see the silver glow of her skin. He often held the crystal pendant she had left behind. Its gentle pulse felt like a heartbeat warm against his palm. At night he would sit on the balcony, the pendant resting in his hand, and watch the stars. He would whisper stories to the sky, hoping somehow she could hear. One late evening, a soft breeze stirred the curtains. Evan leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the constellation Lyra had pointed out on their last walk. He remembered her voice, calm and curious. "Your stars sing like rivers." The memory made his chest ache with both longing and quiet joy. The world moved on. Spring ripened into early summer. Friends invited him to gatherings. Co-workers asked him to join after-work dinners. He went sometimes, smiling when expected, but a part of him always listened for something beyond the human noise, a distant melody across the stars. One Saturday morning, Evan decided to hike the wooded hills outside the city. He carried the pendant in his pocket, its glow faint beneath the sunlight. The path wound through tall pines and gentle streams. The earth smelled of damp moss and life. At the highest ridge, he sat on a sun-warmed rock and gazed across the valley. Clouds drifted like slow ships in the sky. He took the pendant in his hand and closed his eyes. "Where are you now?" he whispered. "Are you safe? Do you remember me?" A soft hum vibrated through the crystal, so faint he almost thought he imagined it. He opened his eyes, heart racing. The glow brightened for a moment, pulsing like a tiny star. A warm calm spread through him, a wordless message. "I am here." That night, as he returned home, Evan found an unfamiliar object resting on his doorstep. A small, silver disc, no larger than a coin. It shimmered faintly in the porch light. When he picked it up, a gentle warmth filled his palm. The surface flickered and a soft voice, unmistakable and beloved, spoke. "Evan," Lyra's voice said, carrying across the distance like music. "Our journey continues among the stars. I feel you in every quiet moment. This disc will let us share thoughts when the skies are clear. Look to the night and I will listen." Evan stood frozen, tears forming. "Lyra," he breathed. From then on, whenever the sky was clear, he would hold the pendant in one hand and the disc in the other. He would speak softly, about his day, the changing seasons, the way the river sparkled in the sunlight. Sometimes he felt a faint answering warmth, a gentle pulse that matched his heartbeat. It wasn't speech in the usual way, but it was connection. It was enough. Months passed. Evan began to notice subtle changes in himself. He grew more patient with people, more open to quiet kindness. He found beauty in small details, the way dew clung to morning grass, the laugh of a child on the street, the rustle of leaves in the evening wind. Lyra had opened his eyes to wonder, and that wonder remained. Friends remarked on the calm strength in him. "You seem different," one coworker said. "Like you've been somewhere far away." Evan only smiled. "I guess I have," he replied. One crisp autumn evening, the city held a festival of lights along the river. Lanterns floated on the water, glowing like drifting stars. Evan walked the familiar path where he and Lyra had once strolled. He carried the pendant against his heart. As the lanterns reflected in the water, he whispered, "You would love this, Lyra." The crystal warmed gently, pulsing with that familiar heartbeat. A feeling washed through him, joy, affection, and something vast like the sky itself. He knew she was listening, perhaps even watching from some distant world. As winter approached, Evan realized the bond they shared had grown into something beyond distance or time. It wasn't just love in the simple human sense. It was a bridge between worlds, a quiet truth that life and connection could reach across the universe. One snowy night, he sat by the window, a cup of tea in hand. Stars glittered sharp and cold above the city. He held the pendant and closed his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly, "for teaching me how big the universe can feel, and how small when hearts are joined. The pendant glowed warmly, a steady light in the darkness. A whisper of thought touched his mind, gentle and clear. "And thank you, Evan, for showing me what it means to belong." Evan smiled, a tear sliding down his cheek. He felt no emptiness, only a deep, peaceful joy. Lyra was far among the stars, yet closer than ever. Their bond was not a fragile thread, but a living current that neither time nor space could break. He looked out at the winter sky, endless and bright. "Wherever you are," he whispered, "I'm with you." The stars above shimmered, and for a moment the night itself seemed to hum in reply.